It's back. It's me. It's your boy. I'm coming at you live. Oh my god, I can't do the hat. Alright, this is, oh no, it's stuck, everything hurts. Ow! I haven't worn this in such a long time. I made this. Oh, it's disgusting. A while back, I made this jacket and I cosplayed Lance from Voltron. Ocean Man, take me by the hand. People! Pow, pow, pow.
Girl, you've already activated.
Sorry. Wait. Shut your quizneck. On the day that I was Lance, there was supposed to be like a Voltron slumber party, right? So I thought it would be really funny if I wore a Finn the Human onesie, and I was gonna make Lance's slippers that he wears, which I never finished. I posted a whole vlog video. You know what? Nobody has to look this up. Please, just disgusting. These were the slippers that I wore. That was back in 2017. So I thought I would break out these slippers in this bag that has like supplies in it, right? And finish my slippers. It's disgusting emoji slippers. I got them because they look like the shape, right? And I was just gonna put fabric over it and then sew it on top of it, and then that way I would have the slippers so I wouldn't have to make actual slippers. So this is just the intro. I have no idea what I'm going from this. It'll probably be like my other cosplay videos, like a time lapse and me talking in the background, so. Does this still work? Oh, woo! I can't see anything. Oh, the cringe, it's so strong. Why did I think this was a good idea? I wore these at some point. There's a picture of me in these, I swear, on Instagram. That doesn't need to be looked at either. What am I touching? Yo, it's your boy, the tailor. Let's see, what fabric did I get? Oh, I got fabric quartz for this. Ooh, pass me a smart 2 blues for each slipper. Nice, lovely. I'll throw up a picture on screen. That's what they look like. So my initial plan back then was to just take the slipper, put the fabric on it, and then just like hand sew it to the slipper. I mean, it'll look creepy. It'll look like trash, but oop, we have a problem. Past me is dumb. She didn't get white. She never got the white fabric. Alright, so I'm gonna find white eventually, but I have blue, black, and yellow, so. I always wanted to just like order the slippers online, but then I'm like, I bought the like disgusting emoji slippers and I bought the fabric. I mean, they call me the tailor because of how I thread the needle. That's about it. I hope you enjoy. They make a noise too. Oh my god. Oh, I look so cringy, dude. We're gonna make some slippers. I'll probably put them on at the end with my Adventure Time onesie, but we'll see. I cannot believe I never finished these slippers. I was lit so many times, and I don't know, I just got out of the Voltron fandom, you know? After all my cringiness, I was like, I should leave. I should subject people to my cringe anymore. I looked into the fabric that I used to make my bunny plushes, and I found this soft white fabric, so I thought I would use it for the white part of the slippers. When I laid the white soft fabric over the slipper, the face kind of showed through and it really bothered me. So I found some white tulip slick fabric paint stuff, and I decided to fill in the face with white. That way it wouldn't show through that much. Also, because the face kind of indented on itself and I didn't want the shape of the eyes and the mouth to pop through. See, now that I'm watching this and I know what I didn't need to do this step at all because I ended up covering everything with different items. I'm just watching myself waste my own time here. I found some extra cotton that I was using as test fabric, and I laid it over the slipper and pinned it to it and kind of drew on top of it the face, the shape that I wanted. At no point did I properly measure out each of the shapes I made. I just kind of like laid the fabric over the slipper and I'm like, you know what, that looks good, that's good, I'll cut that out and then I'll sew on top of it. What I was trying to do was, on the front of the slipper, it was made up of like 3 key parts. A circle for the face and then 2 pieces on the back. So I basically made a pattern for the 2 pieces on the back and then a pattern for the face piece, which were all going to be in blue. Now, as you can see, the face piece, when I looked really closely at the yellow fabric, it had darts in the top along the curve. So I thought I would try to replicate it as much as possible. I honestly thought about cutting the yellow stuff off of the whole slipper, and then I was like, oh, I don't want to have to re-sew that on. That's what I'm sewing the fabric to. So this is basically like troubleshooting a pattern. But depending on the slipper that you're using, if you're trying to do this the same way, just try to see how the fabric is sewn onto the slipper, and then I would say replicate that like I tried to do. Now for the curve part, I made sure to have 4 darts. 1 in the middle and then 2 on each sides. So 5 in total. After I got all my main shapes cut out in my pattern fabric, I went into my fabric chest and I found the underside of an old bath mat that I had totally seam ripped. Because as you can see, the foots on mine are totally like gross and disgusting because I wore them and I wanted to give them new soles. And this fabric definitely looks similar. It had the weird white bubbles. So I was like, this is perfect. I'll just cut this up and I'll sew that on the bottom of it. Here I am cutting out the first blue pieces for 1 slipper. Now I cut out 2 strips that were a little bit over 1 inch. That way I could put them on the sides of the sole. And then next I'm cutting out the front face part and then the 2 back pieces. Next I'm cutting out a white test piece. I say test piece because I ended up adjusting it and recutting it and then cutting out final pieces later. So this was just so that I could keep layering it over to make sure that the shape I was going for was correct. Now, because the soles of my slippers were awful, I don't know, I can't even remember when I wore these. I wore them though, definitely. They were so jacked up, and when I laid over the new fabric for the bottom, the yellow and like that dirt color kind of showed through, so I thought, oh, how about I paint the whole bottom part white? And instead of using that slick tulip fabric paint, right, I used regular white paint, and oh my gosh, it just kept sinking in and it wouldn't like slide, you know, it wouldn't glide gracefully. I would put paint in one spot and it would immediately just, it would soak up all of the paint. So this took forever. The first one came out really patchy, and then the second one looked real nice. It looked nice. The whole time I was pretty much just going off of that one picture from the show, and of course you can't see the bottom, so I was like, After the paint had dried, I pinned the bottom pieces I just cut out to the top, that way I would know where to lay them over, and then I painted on some fabric glue, and then I would fold it over and then kind of press it to the bottom, that way it would definitely stick even after I sewed it. I did this because I didn't want it to kind of have that weird droop or that kind of bubble something creates when it's not sticking. Here I am cutting out the rest of the blue pieces. And I also traced the curve again to cut out the heel piece. And then cutting out 8 triangle pieces for the ears. After that, I cut the darts into the face shape and then pinned them on the top to make sure they were tight enough. In the end, they were definitely not tight enough, but I mean, I tried. So after all the pieces were cut out, I pinned all of the darts and kind of drew a line to make sure I knew how deep to sew them. Next, I pinned together the 2 back pieces and then pinned together 2 strips, but only on one edge. Oh my gosh, and then I realized I didn't cut out enough ear pieces. The ears weren't perfect triangles, they were just slightly off, and I kind of wanted them that way. I didn't want them to be perfect. There, so sewing the strip ends together, and then the back pieces, and then the ears. And those were all the ears after they were done. The dart step took a long time because after each one I had to, of course, tie the edges together. So after that, I cut the edges of the ears and flipped them inside out. Then I went ahead and pre-pinned the back section to the head part, or the face part. Next, I stuffed each of the ears, and then I pinned the stuffing inside. And because they weren't perfect triangles, I kind of picked which long side and short side I wanted it to be. So because I pinned it to the wrong side, I then opened up the pins and pushed the ear on the inside, and they repinned it. That way I could make sure they were even and everything would stay in the same place. This was a little bit difficult because of the stuffing, but I didn't want to have too little stuffing and then not have the ears, stick up. And then the last sewing machine bit, sewing all those pieces together with the ears on the inside. And then when I flipped it all over, it looked like that. Now, that is all the machine sewing throughout this entire process. So get ready for a lot of hand sewing and me hunched over and clearly blocking everything that I'm doing. So because I painted the whole sole part white, I would kind of peek over and see where the yellow part was. So I basically flipped the blue part down so it was right sides together, and then I hand sewed it on top, making sure to kind of sew through the yellow fabric and not the white sole I had painted. I mean, because the slippers were kind of jacked up, I ended up having to sew through the white part a couple of times. But overall, my goal was to sew it around the whole sole and then basically flip over the blue part. That way I could get the sides. But this definitely took a while. In the end, I thought it looked really nice. The reason I made 2 strips was because the blue fabric wasn't long enough to go all the way around. So I thought I would make 2 long strips with the whole length of the cord that I had. And then when I got to the end, I would just cut the extra off. Also, when I got to the end, I had to make sure to sew those last 2 together. That way when it flips, it would make more sense. So that's what the whole thing looks like, all done. My hand sewing looked very ugly underneath that. Looked crazy. See, look how nice that looks when you flip it over. And then boom, you got your whole sole. Next step was sewing the heel part on. Now, I didn't want to actually sew deep into the slipper part because that would be annoying and time consuming. So I thought I would try to get most of it to be blue. So what I did was I folded a little bit of it over and then I hand sewed it onto the top just through the yellow fabric. Now in the picture, it kind of looks like the whole bottom of it is blue. And a part of me thought about leaving it yellow because I was like, oh, my heel's gonna be blocking it anyway. And I was like, nah, we'll make it all blue. After that, I cut the edges off a little bit and then I tacked down the middle onto the curved part. That way it would stay to the inside. Then once I was done with that, I flipped over the blue strip and basically tucked in a little bit of the fabric because that was the part I was going to be sewing. And then from there, I kind of took my scissors and my fingers and tucked in that whole heel piece into the strip. So after you fold it over and tuck in the fabric, that's what it should look like. So from there, I hand sewed just the heel. Now I did this because I knew I was going to be messing with a lot of the fabric in the front and I didn't want to keep flipping the heel part of the strips back and forth over and over again and then do the whole sole in the end. So I thought I would just do the heel part of the sole. That way it was definitely sewn and stuck on there in this place that I wanted it to be in. Now, up until then, my hand sewing was a little janky, but around here was when I really tried to make sure that my seams were going into a straight line and some weren't bigger than others. Of course, it was a little hard because I had to make sure I was definitely poking through all the layers of blue and the layer of yellow, because if not, it wouldn't actually be sewn to the slipper. And a couple of times I could definitely feel that I was sewing deeper than the yellow fabric, but I didn't mind because I wanted to make sure it would stay on there and it wouldn't, slip off. The whole audio that I'm recording for this is going to be over an hour long, and I didn't think that making slippers would take over an hour. Usually that's like a whole cosplay where it's just slippers. It's just slippers, and I'm shocked that there's this much audio to record. I did a lot of stuff. I did so much stuff, dude. Oh, and I'm putting on the slipper. All right, yep. And she's kicking the camera. Oh no. All right, so now that that huge part is sewn, I can lay it over the whole slipper, and now you can basically see what I was going for if I wasn't explaining it very well. I'm sorry if my explanations are so confusing at times. So right now, I'm basically laying the fabric on top and kind of cutting out the shapes I want for the face. This is when I realized that the white part was gonna be way too big, and this is when I also realized that the blue pieces I had sewn are too big because the slippers are all janky and messed up. Both of the slippers were like a different shape, and they were clearly kind of like lopsided, so it kind of messed me up that they weren't perfectly symmetrical and even. But here I am adjusting the white piece and then making sure that everything in the end, all of the pieces would combine into a normal face that I was going for. And because the blue piece was too big, I was also testing out stuffing the head, which I did later. All right, now that I'm done testing out all my whatevers, here is the next hand sewing part. So I folded over the edge of the back pieces a little bit and pinned them down. And I basically went from the seam line in the middle to the edge. It's hard to see on the actual slipper, but I'm trying to sew onto the seam line that the slipper had already had because I was still trying to replicate the shapes. So I was trying to sew it over that original seam line. I feel like I'm pronouncing some of my words a little weird. It's dark, I'm out of breath, I'm tired. I should be laying down after eating Domino's, dude. But I did a little bit of a whoopsie there, because of course I didn't cut out the pieces right, and then I couldn't, hit that corner as gracefully as I thought I would. All of the edges right around that little part right there were just a little effed up. I will say this was probably the hardest thing to hand sew at this point, and it was because I wasn't hitting a sole, which was hard, so I definitely knew when to stop pushing in. It was just all fluff, and it was pushing, and I couldn't just hold the fabric in the right place, and I was so aggravated, and I was like, this is good enough. But that's what that looked like after sewing on the back part. Now the reason I sewed on the back part first was because I wanted to be able to pull over the edge like I'm doing now. So on the inside, I basically pulled the seam allowance to the front where the ears were, and then I gently stuffed it with fluff, because of course the piece I made was too big, and then the darts weren't puffing out. So the darts being indented definitely bothered me. So I just gently filled the head with some more stuff, that way it would puff everything back out. After I had gotten everything stuffed and the places that I wanted it in, I pinned the blue part down. Now, because I didn't add darts to the bottom part, the blue part was going to be kind of bunchy, but it didn't matter because I was going to be sewing the white part over it. I was basically trying to make sure that the white part would be sewn flat on the top. I also tacked down at 3 points the blue part to the slipper, that way the stuffing wouldn't slip out and move around while I was sewing other things on top of it. Now that I had finally gotten the actual shape I had wanted, I cut out my final white pieces. It took me a little bit to make sure that the 3 mounds looked the way I wanted them, because I knew I was going to be sewing over the nose, over the middle of the white part, but I also wanted to make sure that the dips were deep enough. And then after I pinned the sides of the white part down, and I hand sewed it, working my way from the sides to the middle. Now this time I hand sewed a little bit differently. Instead of folding it over, I actually went around it, that way it wouldn't fray away, the fluff. And it's mostly because I didn't want the fluff to fold over and then be too thick. But this did take a hot minute. But in the end, I really liked how it came out, and the fluff didn't fray away at all, which was great. Now, the reason I did the top first instead of the bottom was because I knew in the end that once I tucked in the white part to the sole blue strip, that it was going to be a little bit bunchy. And if I had sewn the bottom before, then the white part along the top curve would have been bunchy instead, which I didn't want. I didn't want to have to add darts to the white part. So I basically stuffed it enough, that way when I sewed the white part down, it would lay perfectly flat over the blue. Now I didn't put crazy stuffing inside because I didn't want it to be kind of dense and then form those, stuffing balls inside. So I had to be kind of delicate with the front, that way I wasn't pushing the stuffing and moving it around before I had gotten the whole bottom sewn. So this is take 2 of me cutting out the face pieces. The first time was totally jacked up and I epically failed on it. So I cut out 2 black pieces and 4 yellow pieces. And originally I had wanted to fold it over, but instead I just cut out single layer pieces And after that, I took a very long time. I was testing out where I wanted them to be on the face. So I kept pinning them and unpinning them and adjusting them because I wanted to make sure that it matched up with the picture and that the spacing of them looked proper, because the eyes were kind of a certain spot over the yellow mounds. And then I had to make sure the eyes were tilted in a certain way, that way I could draw those black lines in the end. And then after I was done pinning everything, they look like that. So cute. Next, the same way that I sewed the white piece, I sewed the nose on first. Now, sewing the face on was just so delicate. Because the cotton fabric, the quartz, they were very, very thin, and I didn't want it to fray away too much, and I kind of oofed myself because I went over and under instead of under and over. So the whole time I was basically pulling out the white fluff through the black fabric every time, and I was like, oh, it's too much. I can't go back at this point. But it didn't really bother me in the end. I was like, whatever, it still looks fine. Also, throughout sewing the nose piece, I was trying to mainly go through the white fabric and not through the blue and through the yellow, because I didn't want to sew through all of it and then push the stuffing out of the shape that I had created. Throughout this though, I did go around twice, that way I definitely knew it was stuck on there. And then here's a close-up of it. So you can kind of see the white fluff sticking out, but I was like, yeah, it looks alright. The eyes. I had to go into my thread and actually find yellow thread. I don't buy any yellow thread because I've never needed it before. So I had to dig deep into my old like tiny little spools you get with like your first sewing kits and find yellow thread for the eyes. The eyes I didn't go over twice because the fabric was way too thin there and it looked kind of iffy when I did it twice. It kind of made it fray away even more, so I decided to only do one round. So after all of that, this is what the face looks like. We've made it to the second to last step. So here I am cutting the extra of the white part off and then tucking it underneath the brim of the slipper. Now I made sure to pin the sides down first, that way those were flat and smooth. And then I pinned the middle down underneath the nose, and then from there I kind of scrunched up the white part and kind of tried to evenly distribute out the bumps and then repin them. So after that, that's what it looked like. And then from there, here is the last hand sewing bit, is sewing on the rest of the sole. Now this was a little bit tough because I was sewing through a lot of fabric, and at times I'm pretty sure I did miss the slipper, but I kept catching it again, so it was okay. The bunched up parts were a little hard to get, so a couple of times I kept purposely skipping the slipper. That way it wasn't sewn too tight and the bunches weren't like too gross looking. And there it is. So these are the slippers before adding the lines. And honestly, I could have done a lot worse now that I'm thinking about it. I had some black fabric paint and I thought that's how I would draw the lines on. I'm sure you could use like a Sharpie or a black pen. I don't know why I would want it to be extra and get black fabric paint. Keep in mind, this right now is at like 500 speed. I could not open the bottle. It took me so long. I'm pretty sure I ate paint. I can't stop myself from eating paint lately. And then boom, in the background, tragedy struck. I cannot believe it. If you're gonna open paint, dude, don't set it down. Immediately put the cap back on it. This is not the first time that I've spilled paint in my room since moving here. It was so liquidy. It was so liquidy. It wasn't like, you know, when you tip over paint, it does that slow kind of drip over it immediately. It was like water onto the floor. I was done. Now, at first I tried to take like a brown pencil and mark off the line. Didn't show up, so instead of using a paintbrush, I used the tip of a pen and kind of lightly made the line because I didn't want the line to be too thick or too dark, because I'm pretty sure it was supposed to be like a seam line, I had thought, but I was like, I'll just draw that on, whatever. There it is. Here are the finished slippers. I can't believe this is what I spent 2 weeks on. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to like model off shoe wear because it involves my feet, and I think that's a little weird. Like usually I just put the clothes on the mannequin and then I turn the mannequin. I'm like, ooh, look at this. But I'm like, this is shoes. I don't normally go out of my way for my cosplay footwear. I mostly try to find shoes that match the costume in some way. But maybe I should try harder to make videos recording myself making props and other things that don't involve just the clothes part. I don't know what I'm doing. I put the camera, my legs are too long for this. I put the camera too close. I was trying to do that, the running thing. I don't know what I'm doing with my legs. Like, oh my God, your feet are going above the camera. This is, you know what? We're gonna end this. We're back. It's ya boy, the tailor. Ooh. They call me the tailor because of how I thread the needle, and my needle and I made this. I mean, honestly, they're not that bad. That looks pretty good. That's pretty good. I'm actually really happy with the way that they turned out, and I'm glad I could walk in them without any of the seams ripping. I was afraid of that because I've never sewed on shoes before, so. I mean, it looks right. I just keep staring at it because like a part of me could still feel, you know, the cringe. It's the feel of the emoji, you know, like emojis in general, the Emoji Movie, people who put emojis all in their Twitter thing. It's cringe. I can feel the cringe coming through the fabric, and it's I mean, I was Lance like 3 times, and making these just reminded me of how much I dabbed, how cringy I was. Right now it's June 11th, so this is what I did. For the past like 2 weeks, this is what I did. It's soft. I mean, come on. It looks like it. It definitely looks like it. I mean, I've probably mentioned already that one of the slippers, they're both like off-centered. So when I sewed the fabric on top of it, it just went a little bit to the, just right over there, a little too much. Now it's like I can't wear these. I can't wear these outside because now I'm afraid of getting them dirty. Like, I'll wear them inside, definitely. And I can't wear these. Something's off. Something's not right. Something's not clicking. Do you ever just think about the things you've made and the things you've done and you're just like, These are going right back into my cosplay closet, and they'll never see the light of day. So I hope you enjoyed this video of making Voltron slippers. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Thank you so much for watching, and shut your Quiznack, girl. If she didn't play the Voltron theme while the videos show up on the screen. Oh, wait, do you think those will fit on the... Oh. 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 Yo. It's one of these kinds of days.